Welcome to Financial Counseling Unit 2, Factors Influencing Financial Decisions. So let's talk about, or in this section we're going to talk about the different factors that influence financial decisions. We're going to talk about gaining awareness of institutional, social, personal conditions that can create opportunities as well as barriers to financial stability. We're going to hopefully help you understand what influences financial behavior, and then finally help you to recognize and support conditions that promote economic stability and prosperity for your clients. First, let's talk about this idea of the American dream. Now, what is it? Do you believe in it? Why or why not? I know for a long time the American dream was home ownership. And for a long time, I included, believed that everyone should own a home, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. In order to attain the American dream, you had to become a homeowner. And I still feel it's a good idea for a lot of people, especially for low-income people, because it's a way of building financial resources. However, after this most recent mortgage crisis, I no longer think that it's for everyone, and it's really on a case-by-case basis that you have to really look at someone's situation and see if home ownership is the American dream for your client or not. For a lot of people, the American dream is wealth. Income of the wealthiest 1% grows 18%, while that of middle and lower wealth groups fell. Men with high school diplomas have seen income decline by 12% over the last 25 years. The most reliable predictor of future economic status, sadly enough, is current status. Warren Buffett said, "There's a class warfare, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war, and we're winning." Another idea of the American dream is that it brings its prosperity. In a democratic U.S. society, it offers the members the ability to succeed. That is the idea of the American dream, which is a wonderful idea. Everybody wants to be able to succeed, to have financial stability, be able to provide for their families, send their children to college, that sort of thing. And also the idea is progress, that future generations will enjoy more opportunities than current and previous ones. And really for a while that was the case. I'm not sure how old many of you are, but if you remember the 50s, like my grandmother was a young woman in the 50s, and then my mother did better than she, and I have done better than her, and that was just the idea, is that each generation would do better and better. But that's not necessarily the case anymore. The reality is there's social inequalities. Social economic status is the biggest predictor now of economic mobility. That is the reality. So depending on where you are on that socioeconomic status, that will actually determine how successful, how economically mobile you are. And the opportunities are shrinking. There's disparities in education, employment, health. It just makes it difficult to get by, much less prosper. Excuse me. So we're going to talk about institution, society, and individual conditions. Marcus Aurelius said, "Poverty is the mother of crime." Then on the other hand, Mother Teresa said, "Being unwanted, unloved, uncared for, forgotten by everybody, I think that is a much greater hunger, a much greater poverty than the person who has nothing to eat." And then actress Sophia Loren said, "The two biggest advantages I had at birth were to be born wise and to be born in poverty." So what beliefs are they expressing with respect to money? Some are saying money is important, some are saying money is not. Marcus Aurelius said it's the mother of crime, so he obviously thinks money is important. But Mother Teresa and Sophia Loren said, nah, maybe that's not the case. So if a lack of money isn't in and of itself a disadvantage, then what is? So we're going to talk about opportunities and barriers. And when we say institutions, we're talking about the educational system, we're talking about in the employment and career arenas, in government, in health, in private industry, as well as the military. I'm going to start off. I want you to, once we go over this just a second, I want you to pause this and actually work on this question. What are your clients' experiences in regards to opportunities and barriers that these institutions can create for them? So just take it line by line and maybe pick, one example for each one. With regards to the education system, what's an opportunity for your client? What's a barrier? I'll give you a short example. You may work with a population where English is not their first language, so education may be challenging for them if they don't know the language that well. Same with employment. If their education level is not as high, then employment may be a little more difficult. So take a moment, go through these, and then continue playing. All right, so now let's talk about society. And with society, we've got communication channels, we've got attitudes that people have, stereotypes and prejudices, which social media seems to have exacerbated, although it may be that social media has just made it obvious to everyone what stereotypes and prejudices still exist. And then, of course, we've got community and, like I said, social networks. All these encompass society, and there can be opportunities there as well as barriers. You've also got personal resources. Now, each individual has a unique set of resources. Poverty is the extent to which an individual goes without those resources, and then there's leveraging of their personal resources, which can create and support opportunities and stability. Of course, the lack of personal resources can create or exacerbate barriers, like we talked about earlier. So let's start with the 7 personal resources. First, financial. That makes sense, right? Having the money to purchase the goods and services that you need. Second is mental. Reading, writing, computing. Having cognitive abilities and acquired skills to navigate daily life independently. And this is a very important one because we hear often from our elected officials that well, if someone wants to make more money, they just need to go back to school and learn, get a college education, and then they can make more money. Because statistics show that folks with a bachelor's degree make more than people without one, and folks with a master's make more than people with a bachelor's. But you may have a community or individual clients who lack the cognitive abilities to go back to school and get a 4-year degree or even a 2-year degree sometimes. So then we've got to look for alternatives to help offset the lack of mental resources. Another is physical health and physical mobility. We see it everywhere, but more prevalent with low-income people because of their access to healthy foods, their access to adequate health care, although that's changed with the Affordable Care Act. So physical resource is definitely important. And then we have emotional, which I know many of us haven't thought about, but being able to choose and control emotional responses, particularly to negative situations, without engaging in self-destructive behavior, stamina, and perseverance. And I can give you an example from my own family. I have my younger sister who I love dearly, but one of her challenges is she lacks the emotional resources to be able to maintain a job full-time. And the challenge with her is that she's a very giving, loving person and wants to help everybody, and she works with the senior population. And so when she sees other folks not giving their 100%, it really irritates her, and it gets to the point where she'll speak out about it. And And I'm still working with her on that. It's a little different when it's family, but the same skills that we're going to talk about here are skills that I've been using with my sister, and she's getting better, but it's an ongoing process. So emotional is very valid, and that's something as counselors we don't think about so much, because we just go, oh, we'll just be quiet about it. But you know, we may have the skills to do that, but maybe our clients don't. So we have to work with them. Another resource is spiritual. Oftentimes folks, when they're in a situation, having a belief in a higher power or some greater good that motivates them and helps them through the situation, that can be very important. Another personal resource is support systems. Do they have friends and family close by? Is that something that are you collecting that information? Are you assessing that when you're looking at your client? Do they have a strong support system? And if so, how can we incorporate them in our action plan? And then role models, having frequent access to adults who are nurturing and eager to help and or mentor your clients. So these are all 7, personal resources. Now we're going to go to the book, and I want you to read client scenario number 1. It's going to be between page 18 and 19. And identify the client's institutional and societal barriers. You're going to identify the client's presence or lack of personal resources. Present or lack of personal resources, refer to page 16. Make a recommendation for building the client's resources and or mitigating their lack of resources, and then summarize that client information in the chart, and we're going to go over it in just a minute. So pause this and then come back to it once you've done that. Alright, so hopefully you've gone over this, and we're just going to continue on to the next section. So the scenario that you read was about Charles, right? What are Charles's opportunities and barriers to economic self-sufficiency with regards to institutional and social opportunities and barriers? And then what personal resources can Charles call on? Now let's look at that on the next screen. Charles is unemployed. He's a handyman with new weatherization skills, is he not? So institutional and social barriers. He's got institutional, he's unemployed with no high school degree, so no education that could help push him over. He doesn't have a driver's license right now because of the child support. And then hasn't he also been a victim of internet scam? Poor Charles, yes. Amelia just took him for $2,000. And then we've got some opportunities with Charles. There may be free training with career counseling at a local workforce development office. He may qualify for some other type of work support. He may be able to get his GED. You know, maybe he can do that in lieu of going back to school. And then hopefully with Pastor Tim, he may be able to get a restricted license. So we've got some opportunities there. Even though it looks kind of bleak, he's got some positive things in his corner. Now let's look at personal barriers. Like we said, one is financial. He's unemployed. He's got a large amount of debt. Plus the $2,000, and then emotional, he's heartbroken right now, and we have to give validity to that. Heartbreak makes it difficult to focus, right? And then he does have family, which you would think is a support system, but they're just always trying to get money from him, so they're not really helping him. Where his resources, his personal resources, will help overcome these barriers is, again, he may be able to get free training and support for the money, for the debt. Emotionally, he's already kind of going in a positive direction. He's hopeful. He's been persevering. Mental, he does have job experience, so that may help him also get a job, especially with the new weatherization skills. He is healthy currently, although stressed. Currently he's healthy, but you want to make sure he stays healthy. So being a positive support will help. And then he's got Pastor Tim, who's there helping him out as well, which is a wonderful thing. So let's talk about the factors that actually influence our financial decisions. There are beliefs, values, needs, wants, and then there are these drivers, which are like motivating factors. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Leo Tolstoy. Whenever I think of this quote, I think of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. You know, we got to start with us first. And ordinary things consistently done produce extraordinary results. I definitely agree with that. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. Let's talk about our beliefs. What are beliefs? They're basically conclusions based on personal experiences, interactions with family, caregivers, school, peers, social institutions, media. And in other words, they are conclusions based on our environment and our interaction with our environment. Are they not? Yeah. And they affect how we perceive reality. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's look here. We've got our beliefs. This gentleman with his fingers pulling his empty pockets says, I can never. And you know, there's another quote, and I forget who says it, but it's whether you think you can or you cannot, you're right. So a belief sometimes is only that. It's not necessarily a fact. It's just a belief. So part of what we do as financial counselors is help our clients to see that maybe that belief isn't accurate in regards to their understanding of how things are. They could say, I can never save money, or I can never become a business owner. And that's where we come in handy to say, hey, yes, you can. A college degree will. Oftentimes you think a college degree will help you make a lot of money. It can, but not always. It depends on the degree, what industry you're in. If you're in an industry that's flooded, maybe not so much. The top right says debt is. And what are people's ideas around debt? Debt is evil. Debt is bad. Debt is good. Debt is helpful. It just kind of depends. It's all beliefs. And then I am blank at saving. Some people think they're really good at saving. Some people think they're horrible at saving. Again, whether they think they can or they cannot, they're right. Here are some other beliefs. I can't save. I can do anything I set my mind to. That's just the way it is. Better safe than sorry. Things will never change. If I work hard, my children will have a better future. Money equals security. I know that last one, a lot of people thought that was true. And that was before we started seeing CEOs of companies and people who are used to making six figures walk into our office because they lost their home because they got laid off, right? So money isn't always security. It helps. It helps definitely, but it's not always security. Now, other than beliefs, we also have values. Values are basically guiding principles, beneficial and desirable. They're also formed from personal, cultural, institutional, socioeconomical experiences, so our environment. They also affect how we perceive reality. Some typical values are common values of freedom, equality, honesty, and hard work. Now let's look at them side by side. Beliefs, conclusions based on environment. Guiding principles are what we want. So they're the optimal, beneficial, desirable, most important. Beliefs are conscious and unconscious. Values are mostly conscious. Values are also derived from experience and environment, like I said. Beliefs can be positive and negative. Values are typically just positive and inspirational. An example of a belief, I cannot save even if I tried. I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. A value would be courage, perseverance, freedom, like we said, equality, honesty, and hard work. Values, yours or theirs. How could your belief values influence your counseling? Is that good or is it bad? I think it can be good if you're helping your client kind of overcome some negative ideas or beliefs that are not true to them. I think it can be bad when we insist that our clients have to do it our way and our way is the only way because our beliefs are so strong. We have to be open-minded as counselors and guide our clients to the goals they want to reach, not the goals we want to reach. Now we also have drivers. That's what motivates human behavior, and they're basically 16 needs that humans consciously and unconsciously seek to meet. Drivers are often used in organizational psychology and cognitive behavior therapy. Now don't worry, we're not going to force you to get a degree in this. We just want to make you aware of some of the motivating factors behind what our clients do so you can help them more effectively. Eating, it's a need for food. Romance, a desire for sex. Physical activity, a need for exercise. Family, desire to raise a family. Social contact, need for peers and friends. Tranquility, need for a safe environment. Acceptance feeds the need for approval. Order feeds the need for organized, stable, predictable environments. Doesn't mean that you're a neat freak or you're very detailed when it comes to how everything is. It just, there needs to be something predictable about your environment. Status, need for social standing or importance. Curiosity fills the need or desire to learn. Honor, needing to be loyal to traditional values of one's family, culture, ethnic group. Idealism is the need for social justice and equality. Independence is the desire or need for individuality. Power is the urge to control the will of others and self. Saving, desire to collect and gather. Some people take it a little too far and become hoarders, but many of us have some desire to collect and gather. And then vengeance, which we all know is the need to strike back. So all these 16 somehow play a role in the behaviors of our client. And that behavior is not just the drivers, but it's also the belief and the values. Let's talk about that a minute. So the ABCs of behavior, which is the outcome of what we're seeing, these values and beliefs and triggers. Values, beliefs, and drivers. I knew it was an ER word and I just blanked out for a minute. All right, so let's get back. ABCs of behavior. First, you've got an action or a triggering episode, and then you would apply the belief, the value, and the driver, and that will give you your consequence or your response. And let's look at an example. The action or the triggering episode might be a friend walks past me without saying hello. So then for me, I'm going to apply the belief, I must have offended him. And then my value is I value our friendship. That's important. And the driver is, I want to be accepted. I want social contact. So my outcome or my consequence or response, after wondering all day, I call him later to see if there's something I did wrong. So you see how the triggering or action will, once applied or filtered is a better word, once filtered through our personal beliefs, values, and drivers, can lead to a consequence or response. And that's going to be different person to person because our values, beliefs, and drivers are different person to person. Let's look at an example. Fran. Despite living paycheck to paycheck, Fran agrees to go to a concert with friends. She works hard and deserves a little fun. Fran uses her credit card to pay for the ticket. Later that month, when her statement comes in, she feels hopeless about her finances. No matter what I do, I'll never get ahead, she thinks. What are Fran's beliefs? Well, she believes she deserves to have fun. She also believes getting ahead is hopeless. What are her values? Hard work, being financially responsible, and enjoyment. She values that. What are her drivers? Social contact and status are her drivers. And then what are her behaviors? Living paycheck to paycheck. She uses her credit card to pay for the ticket. So her behaviors aren't really in line with what she says are important to her, right? Let's look at this a little in terms of the ABCs of behavior. She gets invited to the concert. She applies her belief, which is, I deserve to have fun. She applies her value of hard work, therefore, well, I won't say therefore, hard work, friendship, and fun. These are all important to her. And then her drivers, which are acceptance and social contact. And then that leads us to her consequence, which is her using her credit card because this was important to her. Now let's talk about why do people change? Because obviously, if we think about the example with Fran, she wants to be able to get ahead, but she feels like she can't because she just doesn't have enough money. But on the other hand, her actions show that getting ahead may not be the most important thing to her. Maybe having fun is the most important thing to her. So we see that often, do we not? When we're sitting in front of a client, they're telling us one thing's very important, like I really want to be able to send my kids to school, but then we see, they're stopping at Starbucks every day for coffee. So it just doesn't make sense. We have to find a way to let them see it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. So why do they change? They change because they want to. They also change because they believe they can. And then you have to believe they can. So you as their counselor needs to believe that you can help your client change and that they have the ability to do so. So initially they've got this pre-contemplation stage, we call it. They're not really thinking about what it's going to take to change, they just want to. And then they come to your office and you're helping them think about what changes they need to make. You're preparing them for it. Then they're taking the action, they're maintaining the action, and sometimes there's a relapse, but if not, they've got a stable, improved lifestyle. If they relapse, then we go back through the circle. And let's break that down a little bit. All right, so we saw the pre-contemplation stage. That's really where the individual does not intend to change behavior in the next 6 months. So again, you've got that client who goes to Starbucks every morning, and maybe they've just decided that's important to them and they're not going to change it. So that's something you've got to work with them on to help them want to change. Or find some other area that will have as important an impact, if not more an impact, and work on that instead. And then there's contemplation. Individuals strongly inclined to change behavior within the next 6 months. So you're starting to see a trend here. 6 months is kind of the caveat. Preparation is individual intends to act in the near future, so less than 6 months. And then the action. They've already done it for at least 6 months. And maintenance is action already happens for over 6 months, and the chances to return to old behavior are few. Excuse me. So that's what you want to get them to. You want to, pre-contemplation is before they come to your office. You're helping them see where they can make changes in contemplation. You're helping them prepare for it. They do it with action, and they maintain it with maintenance, and hopefully with your assistance in the follow-up. So here are some sentences for each stage. Pre-contemplation, my blank isn't a problem. So I'll say, my Starbucks habit isn't a problem. Contemplation, my Starbucks habit may be a problem. And then preparation, I want to quit my Starbucks habit. Action, I've just quit going to Starbucks. Maintenance, I stopped going to Starbucks a long time ago. Relapse, I just started going to Starbucks for their caramel macchiato. It's so good. Isn't there always this reasoning behind when a client relapses for whatever reason? Well, I did it because. So how can we support positive change? We can do that by motivation, by sharing knowledge, by giving them the tools they need to be successful, and by giving them resources, the resources they need to be successful as well. Supporting upward mobility, that's also very important. That's something that we can do to help solidify these positive changes. And that may be showing them a way they can go back and get their degree, or even if it's just getting some schooling past high school is good. With regards to family formation, maybe help them see that starting a family a little bit later, once they've established themselves and they've got, money saved for emergencies and that sort of thing, might be a good idea. And of course, having full-time year-round work is deemed critical. And it kind of depends on your industry. And I say that because I used to live near an area that had a major state fair every year. And oftentimes, some of the small vendors would make their money for the year at the state fair. And I want to say the fair lasted 2 weeks. So literally, they could bring home $100 grand in 2 weeks. And so full-time year-round work would not really apply to them because if you made your $100 grand in 2 weeks, enjoy the rest of your year. You've come up with something that works for you. So, but just for typical jobs, where you're working 40 hours a week, you want something that's full-time. And then, of course, helping them with health and wellness, that's critical too, because if they're not eating well, they're not healthy, then it's very likely they're going to miss days at work. And missing days at work could jeopardize their employment. And then lastly, financial literacy. So you can help them by educating them on financial tools, financial resources, financial processes that help people be successful. That's our role. Let's talk a little bit about scarcity and opportunity costs. With scarcity, the economic principle of unlimited wants with limited resources. We hear that from realtors a lot, don't we? They have champagne taste on a beer budget, and that means they want more house than they can afford. And a lot of people do that. I know that's where credit just became such a crutch for people, because before credit cards were popular, you had to have the money to actually afford something. And in some countries where credit is not as prevalent as it is in the United States, that's still the case. And it's scarcity is the choices of the lesser of the two evils, and it results in trade-offs. So if it's unlimited necessity, that's a little different than unlimited wants. And of course, your necessities aren't unlimited. You have, the main things that you have to survive: food, clothes, shelter, that sort of thing. And if you don't have the resources to get that, then that's where there's a huge problem. If it's just your kid wants an Xbox, or you want Michael Jordan tennis shoes, or a trip to Italy, that's a want that is not necessarily something you should put on your credit card. That's something you will definitely want to have saved up for. And then opportunity cost is what must be given up when we make those choices, and they can have long-term negative results. For example, I have had many clients who say, well, I paid that credit card off so I could use it for emergencies, or I don't want to close that account because I want to save it for emergencies. And I would tell them, so you're wanting to finance your emergency is what you're telling me. Because as soon as you have that emergency, you're going to be paying interest on it because you don't have any money in the bank to pay it off at the end of the year. Or not the end of the year, at the end of that payment cycle. I said, why not, instead of using a credit card for that, use a savings account. And that way at least you're earning interest until the emergency hits. And when the emergency hits, you've got the money and you're not paying to use your own money. So that's sometimes when the light bulb goes off and they go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. So here's an example. Henry's car broke down. Without the car, he can't get to work on time. He chooses to pay for the car repairs. Unfortunately, this means Henry will not be able to pay the rent on time. This has him so worried that he makes costly errors at work that threaten his employment. Henry comes home with so much stress he snaps at his wife and kids. So what are Henry's choices? What are his opportunity costs? How can you relate Henry's situation with those you might be financially counseling? All right, pause for just a minute and talk about that in a group, preferably at your office, or just work on it on your own and just kind of think, jot that down, we'll come back and go over it. What are Henry's choices here? What is his opportunity cost? All right, let's see, actually let me go back. So let's talk about what his choices are. Without the car, he can't get to work on time. And this is going to vary depending on where you are, because maybe you can recommend that he use public transportation. Maybe there's a route that he's not familiar with. Maybe he's never taken the bus or the train before. And so you can educate him there. That way he can continue to pay his rent on time and he can continue to get to work on time. Now he may not like riding on the bus or the train, but that's a short-term issue, right? Let's see. He's worried because he hasn't paid his rent, so he's worried that he'll make more costly errors. And with regards to the rent, let's say he did pay for the car repairs and he didn't pay for the rent. There, you may be able to share some resources with him where he can get one-time rental assistance. So that way his rent will be caught up. He won't be stressed out at work. But let's say, so that's another option. If he couldn't pay the rent, so he paid the car and he's stressed out, maybe you can refer him to a counselor who can help him with the stress and help him come up with some ways of coping with stress so he's not snapping at his kids. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what you're looking for. Counselors successfully support client self-sufficiency through highlighting self-sabotaging financial behaviors, assessing resources, advocating against barriers, kind of like Pastor Tim did, educating and then reinforcing positive action. So you're there when they do something good, be their cheerleader, be their biggest fan. All right, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed Unit 2. We'll be right back.